And welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. And with me again today is Mr. Alexander Vazquez, El Capitan himself of Capital City Radio over on KUBU 96.5 FM, at least for a little while longer.
Yes, and then we go into bigger and better things.
Bigger and better. It's always moving up.
It's always moving up. We're always going forward.
And thank you for being back, to Alexander.
And thank you for inviting me anytime.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, there's a big brouhaha over in Europe. And, you know, Macron, the story we actually use is to start this conversation is Macron says Europe must be ready to defend Ukraine without U.S. assistance.
Right.
But my question is what the heck has taken so freaking long? This war's been going on for 3 years.
Right.
We have been solidifying Europe militarily for 80.
Right.
Literally 80 years at this point. At some point, does European not have to take it upon themselves to protect their own?
We spoiled them. We spoiled them, and they took advantage of our generosity and everything like that. But I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that the U.S., wanted for themselves also. But then who would have ever thought that Russia would pull something like this off? And so everything was fine, right? But America didn't come to Croatia's aid right away. And Putin apparently wasn't that afraid of us. And so it was like these guys should have been talking about this 15, 20 years ago, at least.
Yeah. And and some of us have been going for a long time. American taxpayers have been paying for Europe to be peaceful for a long time.
Right.
And for a while, it made some sense, right? Who wanted Germany to rearm right after World War II? No one did. No one wanted Europe to rearm. That's really the reason the United States was parked in Europe, because no one wanted Germany and France and all those places to have big armies again. So I said, well, just park the United States in there and everybody will play nice. And it worked for a very long time, right up until the point says, you're not going to do anything. And even if you do, you're not going to fight in Russia. Russia itself is under no real threat. They're all just fighting on the borders of Ukraine.
Right.
So there's no real threat to Russia. They have no plan to win this war. They're just going to continue it as is. It's like World War I all over again. We're just going to fight because we don't know how to stop.
This is more like the Hatfield and McCoys, okay? 3 years into this, and Russia being the great Russian army and all this other stuff, could not overrun a city or a country and their city. And where they went into entry into Ukraine, Kyiv was like 35 miles from where they went. And instead of going north, they went south. And so you're thinking, are they really serious about this? Because the Russian army should have been done if there was a really invasion. It should have been over in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I think Russia miscalculated. They thought Ukraine was going to collapse and they would just be able to go in and kind of redo things. But, it is what it is at this stage. But Europe has no plan. They're not going to allow Ukraine to go into Russia and actually win the war. So Europe is going to fight the war to not lose, and you don't win wars by fighting to not lose. So the only option, the only realistic option on the table is to find some way to stop fighting. And, whether you like Trump's methodology or not, he has changed the conversation. And that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. And because there's been so many deaths, so many families wiped out. And this is supposed to be the 21st century or whatever, and we're supposed to be all brotherly love and technology and everything. We're all supposed to be living together, and we're not. And stuff like this, Europe just saw that. And I'm sure Europe knew this was coming too, because Putin never made this was not a sneak attack. They knew it was coming. And Ukraine never bought into the idea of building their own army. Same with France, same with England, same with France and Italy. And I'm going, no, the world's still dangerous, and you got to prepare for it. If you want peace, you got to always prepare for war. Yeah,
and the only European country that's actually prepared for war is Poland.
And
Poland's not going to let anybody take over their country again easily.
Not what they went through.
No, Poland's not going to allow that to happen again. But this Germany thing, we're going to go back to Germany. The German elections,
yes.
There was a couple weeks ago, the German elections were held. And there was a very rightward shift, right?
Yes.
And it's not just Germany. It's the whole European Union is taking a rightward shift. And political class, the political elite, the establishment, whatever you want to call them, is very nervous. Because if you took the AfD in Germany, which got about 25% of the vote,
Right.
and the people who, the conservative, moderate conservative party got what, 28%,
Right.
about 30%. And so half of the country, half of Germany is right-leaning, and they're not governing that way. They will take L's just to not give the ADF a win.
Right.
Even just a perceived win.
Right.
No, we're not going to do something 60, 70% of the country wants to do because that's what the ADF wants, so we're just not going to do it. And so as the ADF is racking up zeros, but everybody else is racking up negatives.
Right.
And so the ADF is winning not because they're great, it's because everybody else is terrible. And they just abjectly refuse to deal with the issues that are on the man on the street wants dealt with.
Yes, and most of it is what? Immigration.
Yeah, immigration and the consequences thereof, the cultural consequences thereof.
And Germany has always been, I think, after World War II, they've gone overboard as far as trying to be accommodating and being politically correct, and we're trying to correct our wounds and what was done in the past, and they went overboard. And when you bring in the European Union, when they all voted for this, it was like, one for all, that's it. Okay, when one goes, we all go. Where have you heard that before?
Yeah.
And where have you ever seen that ever work? Nowhere.
No, there's only one place where it's worked.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but that's how we became powerful. And look what we did even in Europe. Look how many military grave sites that we have in Europe. How many do we have here from Europe? None. And so you know what? The Germans are tired of the old guard. The old guard. These people are young now.
Yeah.
Too. The one that are running.
It's the young generation. It's not people older, you and me, our age. No, it's the people under 40.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're tired of the immigration status. They're tired of their economy. It's doing fairly well. But they're not being listened to.
No. Well, and European economy has stagnated while the United States grow. In the last 15, 20 years, the European economy has not grown nearly as much as the United States. And we've hamstrung ourselves. And so if we've hamstrung ourselves and limited our growth, just think what Europe has had to go through. All this net zero and all this madness that they just jumped in blindly without actually going through, okay, what are the consequences of us blindly jumping into net zero at such a rapid pace? And they literally deindustrialized Europe. And maybe you like that, but there's consequences to that.
Yes, and it took Britain, when they got out of the European Union, look at all the heat they took from the rest of Europe. And so Poland, like you said, they were the smart ones in all this. They're the ones who are going to benefit. And I'm glad to see this because the world is changing. The younger people are speaking out more, and they want to be heard, and they're not being heard by the old guard.
Yeah. It's nice to see the conversations changing. Now it's uncomfortable because we don't know where these conversations are going to lead. The future is untold, but the future's always untold. And so buckle up. Put your pants on. You put your big boy pants on. Your big girl. Your big girl blouse. Whatever euphemism you want to use.
Right.
And it's not that dangerous of a ride. We've been there before, and the world is a much better place now than it was 200 years ago. And so it's a pretty good bet that the world will be a better place 200 years from now. It's just a pretty good bet. So, there's another thing that has happened since Donald Trump has been in office. We talked about how Donald Trump has changed the conversation in Europe. There is just another conversation that started in Washington, D.C., and that is Google searches for defense attorneys have skyrocketed in Washington, D.C., and Mr. Richard Fields has something to say about this. So let's see what's coming from Richard this week.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's report from the fields. Google searches for criminal defense attorneys in Washington, D.C. began surging the day before Donald J. Trump was inaugurated president. They are now 5 times higher than in the rest of the country. I wonder why. Since lawyer-client conversations are still private, we must speculate. I can think of 2 plausible explanations. One It's payback time by Trump. MAGA Republicans and Trump himself complained loudly and long that Trump was subject to lawfare throughout his first term as president and then during the Biden presidency. Those complaints are at least partly based in fact. Trump may be weaponizing the Justice Department to target Democrats just like Democrats targeted him. Or two, Elon Musk's Doge may be uncovering some serious criminal activity on the part of the deep state bureaucrats who have been going about their business with minimal adult supervision for decades. The Pentagon has failed to pass an audit for 7 years running. The amount of military spending they cannot account for runs in the billions. If the money was spent, some swamp critters somewhere received it. Pentagon misspending is the low-hanging fruit. Doge has also documented that U.S. aid spending went to highly questionable NGOs. Another juicy target is money spent on environmental projects and boondoggles. In addition to searches for criminal defense attorneys, there's also been a D.C. surge in searches for wire money and offshore bank. Are bent bureaucrats trying to hide their ill-gotten gains? Reasonable people want to know. I'm sure I do. 16 years ago, Harvey Silverglate, the co-founder of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, wrote the book 3 Felonies a Day, which posited that 3 is the average number of felonies committed daily by everyone, mostly unwittingly. I suspect that residents of D.C. bring that average number up substantially. The reason for that hard-to-believe assertion is the mind-numbing number of regulations written not by Congress, but by bureaucrats, which can carry criminal penalties. Could it be that the profligate rulemaking by D.C. bureaucrats is coming back to bite them? A schadenfreude moment says we can hope so. Whatever the reason for the spike in D.C. criminal defense demand, we can certainly sit back and enjoy the spectacle. Time to get out the popcorn. I'm Richard Fields, and that's this week's Report from the Fields.
You know, that Schadenfreude,
Hi, this is
kind of,
Richard
the word I
Fields
can't
with this
pronounce.
week's report.
Freudenschreuder, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I'm fighting with that.
Right.
Because, you know, as those of us who complain about the daily grind of regulations, you know, I pay a higher price for parking in front of my house than a bureaucrat will pay for violating my constitutional rights. And, you know, it's a $60 parking ticket to park in front of my house. And, you know, a bureaucrat pays nothing when they violate my constitutional rights. So seeing these people have to scramble and watching unelected bureaucrats, you know, get all bent out of shape because unelected bureaucrats are examining how they operate, I'm having a hard time feeling much sympathy.
I have yet to meet anybody who has sympathy for state workers and government workers, whether it's federal, state, county, city, whatever. They have pretty damn good packages. And when some average person like you and I go to City Hall because of violation and we need a permit, we need this, we need that, and the way we get customer service from them, they lose a lot of support. And you're seeing that on television, you're seeing that on the radio, you're seeing that on the streets. I think next Wednesday, the biggest rally for state workers are going to be out there in the Capitol. And what are they going to say? We give you the best services. I mean, they don't have an argument. There's no sympathy there.
Yeah. I mean, individually, as an individual human being who's been laid off, who's had to go and deal with you know, losing their job, or had someone, or who's had to be scrutinized by some arbitrary, you know, bureaucrat.
Right.
I feel for the individual.
Right.
But as in mass, I just have a hard time gathering much sympathy for them. I really just don't.
This is California. We have Elon. Well, in the country, we have Elon Musk with big D, big Doge. Okay. In California, because of the budgets and because there's a lot of counties that are underwater right now, especially Sacramento County. we have small d. And,
Well,
and that's going to happen.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, so we're going to move on here. We might disagree a little bit on this one, Alexander. The Trump administration is launching a portal for reporting DEI in public schools.
Right.
Now, I understand the desire, and I understand the precedent. The precedent is made, right? When you started mandating people prove that they got vaccinated and all these kind of things, you kind of surrendered your right to operate freely. But at the same point, I don't like us creating snitching culture.
Right.
I'm just not happy about it. We should not be snitching on our friends and neighbors. And, individual schools and individual school districts should have the power to kind of decide curriculum on their own. This is why school choice is so important. If you want to send your kid to a woke school, you should be able to.
Right.
If you want to send your kid to an anti-woke school, you should be able to. If you just want to send your kid to a normal school where they're going to get a basic, general, decent education, you should be able to do that as well.
Right.
And so this is the real problem. I'm not happy about this continuation of snitching culture.
Right.
It's not necessarily Trump's fault. We've been doing this for the last decade now. But I am not, again, I'm going back to it's hard for me to feel sympathetic to these school districts who have been running rampshot, who've been calling angry parents criminals. It's very hard for me to feel much sympathy again.
Well, someone I've been on the radio for years now, and one of my first targets was the Sacramento Unified School District. And to this day, they've had a attitude and a culture of it's us against the world. It's us against the parents. It's us against everybody else. We want to be left alone. We know what we're doing, everything. And yet, I used to cover that quite a bit, even had ideas. And you get so slapped down by them, and you think, okay, screw you, I'm going to take my kids out of the school. I'm going to put them in homeschooling, or I'm going to do something, okay? But taxpayers and parents now, they look at this and they're saying, I'm not getting my kid the best education I possibly can, and now they're eating each other up. This is almost, if you want to teach history, teach about the Donner Party, because that's exactly what you guys are doing. You're eating each other up,
Yeah.
You're turning on each other, and a lot of it has to do with the unions. And they've put in that friction in there.
Yeah, we politicized education, and with the creation of the Department of Education, we politicized education unwittingly. I don't think the people who actually wanted to create it meant to politicize it. But what you forget is activists kind of try to fill those roles. They have a desire, they have a goal, their own viewpoint, and they try to implement that when they get hired into these roles.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What do you feel about states' rights as far as let the states handle the schools in their states and get the feds out of there?
All the feds should be doing is writing checks to school districts or schools that don't have the resources,
Right.
that are underfunded because of they're either too poor or they're too rural, too dispersed to have the synergy. That's it. They should be a check writing organization. And someone goes through, hey, are you spending the money relatively wisely?
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's it. That's all the Department of Education
Yeah,
should be
let
doing.
them be a bank, let them be a credit union, whatever,
Yeah.
okay? Because our society right now, we are moving at a record pace where people are just moving. There's schools right now that are completely, totally empty. You look at Oakland, they're about to lay off 800 people out there. And it's because of bad administration, bad management, whatever. But people are just moving around now. They can't afford California, so they go to Texas, or they go to Tennessee, or whatever. And then there's people in the West, in the Midwest, that they're saying, we want to come to California. But they're only going to specific parts of California.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Chicago. Chicago has tried to close a bunch of schools because they have more capacity than they have students, and the unions wouldn't allow. They wouldn't allow to adjust to fit the modern needs, and that's the real problem with education.
Yes,
is that they're not allowed to adapt to modern needs. So.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you on that one because I think the unions have way too much power in this. Say in anything that goes on with the school districts, they have way too much say in this.
Yeah, they've gone past. Hey, we're negotiating. Salaries and benefits for our members. They're now actually negotiating how and why and what they're going to educate your children, and that's beyond their scope. All right, so we're going to move on real quick. I want to cover this next one: blackouts and boycotts. Do they work? Because there was February 28th.
Yeah.
There was a big blackout, and they ran the numbers, and they essentially, it was within margin of error for the day, right?
Right.
Now, here's the thing. Economically, those kind of things don't work. I actually understand it culturally. And
Right.
you want to gather your people, you gather your resources, you have the people something to do, something so your community can feel like they're trying to do something. Even if you don't accomplish anything, you at least feel like you're trying to do something.
Right.
So from that perspective, I understand it. But if you actually think that these kind of boycotts are especially single day boycotts, those do nothing. At best, you just give your workers a day of rest where it's a little slow.
If that. But you're not going to beat them. You're not going to beat them,
No.
especially when you have 50% off.
Yeah. And
I don't care. I don't care what it is. 50% off, they're going to break through the doors.
And the thing is, this Target, there's the 40-day boycott of Target because of they're repealing their DEI initiatives, right? Well, the reason Target pulled their DEI initiatives was because they were costing them more. Target's. I actually feel a little bad for Target, right? They're just trying to do what the signals the markets are sending them. They used to send them to say, you do this DEI stuff, more people will shop. And now the market's saying, you do this DEI stuff, more people are not going to shop. And so they're going, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And well, this is the problem when you start down this path of playing politics with your business, especially a mass market business. If you're a niche business, you can get away with it.
Right.
But if you're a mass market business like Target or Walmart or Amazon, you better stay far away from politics.
Yes, because people are going to use their pockets and wallets to guide them, saying, you know what, I don't care about politics or anything like that. I want to feed my family. I need food in the cupboards, and you know.
I need eggs, and I need milk.
Oh, eggs, yeah.
I need eggs and milk, and I don't want to have to go and worry about politics when I go think about.
Right.
I just want to go to the store and buy myself some stuff. All right, so we are going to move on again because I want to make sure we get this in. Insights into Americans' views of the news media. I saw this the other day. And so, Americans are not happy with mainstream news media. No, they're not. So if we can actually bring up the first actual graphic here, Antoine there in the studio. All right, so since 1972 to 2024, as we can see here, it was major news media had a 68% approval rating, kind of things, you report it fair, and now it's down to somewhere in the 30s.
Right.
So a great deal, fair amount. So it was a great deal with 68%. And now the great deal is 31%. Nobody thinks the news media. Can we go to the next one, Anthony? So Republicans have zero trust in the news media.
Fox.
None at all. It's down there at the 6%.
Yeah.
It's down there at 6%. It's been bad for a long time. But Democrats kind of. How much confidence? They kind of have a little bit of confidence, but Republicans and independents, there's zero.
Yeah, and all you have to do is look at the ratings. Okay?
Yeah.
Look at the ratings. Look at how many newspapers are closing. Okay. Now you got the phone, and you can get any kind of information you want, the way you want it, the way you produce it, and you want to hear what you want to hear.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have any of that. In fact, someone was making a good point about this. You take channel like PBS. Before, you even had William F. Buckley with Firing Line. I forgot about Firing Line, where people are going to have discussions. People are going to have debates, okay?
Yeah.
And you can't do that now.
No, because now you get what, four people from one side and one person from the other side, and they argue.
Right.
That's not a discussion.
Right.
I actually miss the days of the discussion. Can we get the next graphic, Anthony, please? All right, so trust and confidence in the
look at
mass
that.
media age by party.
Wow, look at that.
So, you can just look at the trends, right? You don't even have to look at the exact numbers. You can just look at the trends, and they have tanked.
Right.
They have all completely tanked.
Right.
And so, the individual numbers are bad enough, but if you actually take a holistic view at them, we get to this last graphic, Anthony. I think we're on the last graphic. So the net confidence in U.S. institutions, and this is kind of why it's important, right? Small businesses, they're still pretty good, right? Net confidence is 61. People like small businesses. They like the military.
Right.
They're still relatively confident in the police.
Right.
But you get down here to Congress, TV news, newspapers,
Lawyers. Where's the lawyers? I don't see the lawyers.
The criminal justice system.
Yeah, there you go.
So you got
Yeah.
26.
Okay.
But that's the thing. They trust your small business. They trust the guy working down
Right.
at the local auto dealer. They trust your mechanic. They trust all these people far more than they trust your used car salesman more than they trust your television news.
And Congress.
And-
And most Congress people are used car salesman people anyway. They're worse than that. But yes, we don't have that confidence anymore in journalism, in media, in civics, okay? And this plays right along with what you're saying and what is pointing out.
Yeah, so
look at that.
So this is the last one. Americans' ratings of news professionals' honesty and ethics. From 1981, so right from the Reagan era.
Right.
This is from the Reagan era onwards. So, I mean, it was never great. 36, 30.
Right.
It was never really great, but now it's down in the teens.
Well,
And-
would you say that the networks with their TV personalities, that has something to do with it too? Whether it's Maddow or Alex Jones or, Rush Limbaugh or anything like that. I mean, the people itself.
I think they used to at least pretend.
Right.
They used to at least pretend.
Right.
Yes, you could understand that they had a particular viewpoint, but they would at least pretend that they were doing it honorably. It was bias by omission.
Right.
Before, and now it's just bias. It's just up
Yes.
and straight bias. It's what they would and would not cover, and now it's what they all.
And now that even goes in, you can take that into late night talk shows.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody loved Carson. Everybody loved the way he made jokes of both sides.
Jay Leno the same way.
Yes. Okay. Now it's nothing like that anymore.
No, and part of that is I think they were having a problem anyway because of the diversification of entertainment, but then they made it worse.
Yes, but I also think it had a lot to do with talent.
Yeah.
When you look at the talent back then, they could talk about anything and make fun of anything and think fast. Okay. Now these people are scripted.
Yeah, the writer rooms.
Yes.
It's no longer Carson writing his own jokes and going out and
Right.
saying them, which he didn't do at the end of the show. But at the beginning of the show, he did. He wrote his own jokes.
Yeah.
And even at the end, he still wrote a lot of his own jokes
Right.
or rewrote them for himself. But so we don't have that anymore. Yeah, there's no way.
Well, and then even when you go to, let's say, the weather, they'll politicize that. Climate change is man, is manufacturers, is this and that. And you just get tired of it. You just get tired of being bombarded.
Yeah. The winter storm is now climate change. All right, Alexander, we are out of time. Thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching us this week. Thank the crew for working hard in there tonight. I know they're a little short-handed. And please remember to love everybody and have a great night.